President Trump warned yesterday that any protests against Saturday's military parade in Washington, D.C. will be met with very big force and added, quote, "This is people that hate our country." This is people, very big force. Well, hey, at least he's not a grammar Nazi. Could be worse.
It's true. He should have said, "This is a violent mob of people." That'd be more grammatically correct for the Democrat Party. This is a violent mob of criminals. We call them Democrats. Why would you call them anything else? It's the Democrat Party, as any child of 6 can see. A very, very happy Thursday to you, and welcome back once again. The Democrats are, what's the terminology that has always been used? Oh, a criminal organization. I think that's the criminal organization. That's their today's Democrats. You see, they're sacking. Where are they now, Michael? They're Seattle. They're violent in Seattle. They love being violent in Seattle. Seattle, I think, likes it. Seattle has kind of got a kinky relationship with psychotic behavior. You know, they have a 16-foot bronze statue to Vladimir Lenin in a public square in Seattle, Washington, and it's never been vandalized like federal courthouses and places where civilized people go, where they don't worship mass murderers from throughout history, as the Democrat Party obviously does. We've got a Democrat Party like we've never seen a Democrat Party before. And the party is violent. The party is criminal. The party loves crime and criminals. If you kill CEOs or you're a gang member or cartel member, they want to, what's the word I'm looking for? They want to date you. I'll try to keep it clean. They want to date you. Remarkable stuff. We've got a big military parade on Saturday here in Washington, D.C., because it will mark the 250th anniversary, the 250th birthday of the United States Army, the Army of the United States of America, which has liberated more people around the world selflessly, generously than any army in the history of the world, because we are the good guys. The left, they're the bad guys. They're the worst bad guys in the history of the world. And they're looting and burning and attacking around the country. They're like a daily plane crash, the Democrat Party, at a bare minimum. So, well, we've got that now. They're very, very upset because there was at least one Predator drone over Los Angeles looking down on the Democrats who are rioting and burning and looting and plundering and pillaging like the Visigoths, like the Huns, like Kubla Khan's people, ripping their way through American city after American city because they're just not on our side. And a Predator drone overhead providing intelligence. The movements, the Democrats, they're very organized, and they have taxpayer-funded left-wing radical organizations that are handing out gas masks and shields to the rioters. They're wearing masks themselves to conceal their identities, not because they're concerned about the Chinese Communist Wuhan. They're not still, clattering their teeth over the Wuhan Red Death. They're concealing their identities because they're criminals, and that's why they're concealing their identity. And this left-wing group got $34 million last year from the Biden administration because Democrats, I think I've come to the inevitable conclusion that they're all criminals, and they have gender dysphoria, too. There's something wrong with their brains and their genitals, apparently. They're not a bright bunch. But a Predator drone overhead providing intelligence as to the movements. They're using two-way radios to direct each other where the police are, where the police aren't, so they can loot more effectively the Apple store, the jewelry stores. Hey, no cops over here. Come over here and loot because we're the Democrat Party and we're mentally ill. So we've got that unrest. I like that it's called unrest. Last night at about 11:30, I was suffering from unrest. I was trying. That's one version of it. But I didn't burn anything or loot anything. I was still normal, well-adjusted, nonviolent, peaceful. Not mostly peaceful, entirely peaceful. The Democrat Party, again, mostly peaceful means violent. That's what mostly peaceful means, because you can't really be mostly peaceful. That's, as I pointed out before, Europe during World War II was mostly peaceful. Wherever you were standing, you were probably not having bombs dropped on you. The Germans were probably not bayoneting people to death. The French were probably not retreating in cowardice to a wooded area to hide. It was mostly peaceful all the time. And the Democrat Party, mostly peaceful, 50% plus one, mostly peaceful. But if 49% of them are burning the country, then the people at ABC Fake News with George Stephanopoulos of the Clinton White House will say that it's mostly peaceful because they've got a lot of mental issues. And back to the parade on Saturday, the big military parade for the 250th anniversary of the United States Army, the creation of the United States Army, the greatest liberating force in the history of humankind, quite literally. And, United States of America, United States Marine Corps, and we're the good guys. We're definitely the good guys. But these people, can I say these people? I think I can. These people, these miscreants, these awful, terrible people, they, I've got a lot of, but they're planning. Have you seen this? I thought it was kind of funny because the military parade scheduled for Saturday here in our nation's capital. They're going to have, my best girl told me this morning, the Golden Knights will be jumping out of an airplane or airplanes. The precision demonstration parachuting team of the United States Army, the Golden Knights. I've actually jumped out of airplanes with them twice, 2 different times, with parachutes, and great just tandem jumps. And a lot of fun, the Golden Knights, they'll be jumping. And the Democrats are very angry about this because they really love communist China more than, and who did we have yesterday? That Democrat member of Congress, we never even used the audio, how she loves, when she was talking to Chunk Todd, how she really loves, Fidel Castro and Raul Castro and the Castro brothers and communism in Cuba. And she explained, well, just like Barack Obama. Yeah, okay, yeah, I understand. But never mind that. These lunatics with the Democrat Party, they're a violent bunch. They're a crazy bunch. Fun arguments on Capitol Hill in a hearing as well. It was the Democrats again. And, you just interrupt me because of my genitalia. And then you see this one yelling. You see all the words she used about her genitalia? She's got some genitalia issues. These Democrats, they're all screwy. And that's not a play on words in this particular case. It's amazing. But I do want to get back to the military parade, the commemorating the 250th birthday of the United States Army. We're starting to grow up as a nation. We're not Italy yet. We're not Wuhan, China. But 250 years, we're getting there. We're growing up. Now, here's the crooks at the Washington Post. And also, one of the things that I know, speaking of the communists, and that can go from Wuhan, China, and Beijing to DNC headquarters. Oh, and they're squeezing out David Hogg, too. They had to take a laxative, and now they're squeezing out David Hogg. But as David Hogg is being squeezed out, deputy whatever chair of the Democratic National Committee. I've got that coming up, too. But the big military parade, I saw this meme going around that Democrats are spreading. They're planning on protesting all over the country because it's part of the recruiting, brainwashing, indoctrination, death cult that is the Democrat Party. And they're going to have, they say, a million locations, 10 million people are going to be protesting against Trump's military parade because, you see, it's Flag Day. And it's the birthday of the United States Army, 250th birthday. It's not like it's the 111th or, 122nd or something. It's the 250. It's a big round number. And and President Trump said, they have a celebration of the United States Army. And the Democrats would rather wage war against the United States Army because they're crazy. But there's this meme going around of the famous photograph from Tiananmen Square in China, when the communists came in and murdered thousands and thousands of their own people at the Tiananmen Square massacre. And there's the famous picture of the one man. He's a Chinese man, I believe. And he went out into the middle of Tiananmen Square or nearby, and he stood in front of a column of Chinese communist tanks rolling in on Tiananmen Square. And it's a famous photograph because he's a brave man fighting against totalitarianism, fighting against communism. And he was willing to sacrifice his own life, and he probably did. right? And that famous photograph. And the Democrats have taken that photograph and put it out on social media and said, who wants to do this at the military parade? And I thought, well, that's kind of fun and ironic. It's hard to see what's in front of you in an M1 tank, an M1 Abrams tank. So you might be run over on Constitution Avenue, which I think would be pretty damn funny, I've got to say. Hey, what kind of squishing would an M1 tank do of a left-wing protester that's never done a sit-up in his life? Let's do that. But what occurred to me primarily was this is kind of like Tiananmen Square, except the opposite. Because this time, the people standing in front of the tanks are the communists. No sense of irony, these people. The ones challenging the military is not the problem. It's the left. It's the American communists that are the problem in the United States of America, and that's the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party. Now, sitting around on the couch this morning, enjoying my Cheerios and other snacks and blueberries and things with my best girl this morning. And my best girl said, did you see the story in the Post the other day about how the idea for the parade was actually hatched under Joe Biden? No, I said. No, darling. No, my dove. I did not see the story in the Washington Post saying this all started under Joe Biden, militaristic fascist Hitler that he is, because, I can't read everything in that idiotic paper. But I went and found it because of Al Gore's amazing internet. Isn't it amazing? His amazing internet, it never ceases to dazzle. The headline in the Washington Post from, it was June 9th of 2025, so not so long ago, just several days ago. The headline is, How Trump Finally Got the Military Parade He Always Wanted. Now, the person running the Washington Post is Hitler, I think that, and that what his nickname is? I think that's it. Not really, but this is just what they call everybody, and they just want to go around slapping people in the face until the big Civil War comes again. And the subheadline, the year-long effort will culminate next weekend with a few lingering uncertainties. You guys are suffering from a few lingering uncertainties, including how many spectators will show up. Well, how can you know how many spectators will show up before something happens at an open public event, you bunch of idiots? And they've got three idiots, Matt Visor and Olivia George and Dan Lamothe at the Washington Post typing on behalf of the Democrat Party. But it was with great interest that I was reading this morning on the recommendation of my best girl. And I started reading and I said, hey, wait a minute. These three Democrat wankers, these idiots, they wrote, on June 12th, 2024, June 12th, 2024, holy cow, that's amazing because today is June 12th of 2025, so that's 1 year ago, and this is how the story begins. On June 12th, 2024, a day when Joe Biden was still president, believe it or not, and the Washington Post was covering for him, running for re-election, he had every expectation of serving a second term. That's how the Washington Post begins. You guys had every indication, every expectation of pushing him across the finish line or dragging him across the finish line. The U.S. Army filed a permit in the hopes of celebrating its 250th birthday on the National Mall the following year. That'd be this week because this year, it's the 250th, and last year was just the 249th. The event would involve, listen to this, as many as 300 soldiers and civilian personnel. And I looked at that and I laughed. You guys are such idiots. I can't, like a high school band is 300 people. That's not much of a parade celebrating the 250th anniversary. 300 people, that's not a city block. That doesn't fill an intersection. That my balcony wouldn't fit 300 people, but it'd get a bunch. And so the event would involve as many as 300 soldiers and civilian personnel. What a bunch of wankers. There would be a concert by the U.S. Army Band. 4 cannons would be fired. Pretty standard at big events in Washington. The 3rd Infantry Regiment out of Arlington Cemetery brings out their classic vintage, I think they're 4-inch guns, and they do salutes all the time with the 4 cannons. And isn't that amazing? Some 120 chairs would be set up. They're just making this up. All told, it would be a fairly modest affair. So now I think they're upset because the parade schedule for Friday is not as modest as the people at the Washington Post. They're very modest people. They ought to be very modest people. They don't have much to be proud about, even though is it still Pride Month? Does that just go on and on? Isn't every month Pride Month for them? Duck, duck, goose. Yeah, so it turns out that the whole idea was hatched by the United States Army under Joe Biden. This is Joe Biden's militarism. I think he's a fascist. He's Hitler. And if you look at the headlines for this, it's just the news media is the most corrupt institution in the United States of America. And the headlines are berserk. And none of them say, oh, yeah, this started under Joe Biden. Now, they're attacking, and wait till you hear this question from the White House briefing yesterday. Here's a headline from ABC Fake News. Trump warns any protesters at military parade will be met with heavy force. They put the word any in quotation marks. The word any, and this is, you're being lied to when there's one word in quotation marks. So I've got this coming up, and Iran and anti-Semitism. It's all about the Democrats. The CIA being crooked again. Idiot Democrats. Wait till you hear these members of Congress. We're at 888-630-9625. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. So the Democrat Party is burning Seattle. They're burning the American flag. They're attacking Los Angeles. They're an invading army. They're a foreign entity. They're the Communist Party. They're the Soviet Union living among us. And again, in Seattle, they have a 16-foot bronze sculpture of Vladimir Lenin that has never been vandalized. They love it. They go up and they rub it. Give it a good rubbing. Let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Dave calling from Severna Park, Maryland. David, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Well, good morning, Chris. Top of the morning to you.
Welcome.
You're talking about the meme that the Dems sent around about that brave man at Tiananmen Square so many years ago, and I would bet my toothbrush that there will be at least one Yahoo holding a Palestinian or perhaps a Mexican flag that's going to jump in front of a column of tanks in our nation's capital and try and replicate that moment, but be a lot less brave for a lot less noble cause.
Well, that's a fact because, as I mentioned earlier, Dave, this time around it'll be the communists standing in front of the tank, and the tank driver will be the freedom-loving person. The tank crew will be the freedom-loving people, defenders of freedom. And the idiot in front of the tank, you're probably right, with a Hamas headdress on, carrying a Palestinian-Mexican flag. Maybe, Dave, I'm an optimist, so maybe he'll self-immolate. That would be fun. All right, now the anti-American, pro-communist, pro-Chinese Democrat Party violent mob in the street gang, they love USAID because it does so much good. But I was reading this morning, it made me laugh out loud. I laughed out loud because the headlines about the military parade for the 250th anniversary of the United States Army in Washington. Now, the 250th anniversary, the birthday of the U.S. Army, happens to be the same birthday that Donald Trump has. That's the day he was born, years ago. And the Democrats are very angry about that, and they want to burn something, or they want to firebomb some Jews, and then go steal stuff at a jewelry store and an Apple store, and which they're doing around the country because they're the party of looting and of arson. But a couple of headlines from the Democrats. Trump warns any protesters at military parade will be, quote, met with heavy force. Will be met with heavy force. And that's what he said. The president saying, hey, if you show up at the military, why would Americans, leftists, show up at a military parade in Washington on the 250th anniversary of the Army to protest, and it's because of the mental illnesses. National Panhandler Radio, suckling on the taxpayer teat in order to lie to America. I was telling you yesterday about the new book coming out about how NPR in Washington used to have an in-house cocaine dealer. They had their own, not only they had their own sushi chef, they had their in-house cocaine dealer. And it was not Hunter Biden, interestingly enough. It was just some NPR employee who was also the in-house cocaine dealer. And I told you about CNN. We had a senior journalist, CNN Washington, who would do, I don't know if he was dealing cocaine at the Washington Bureau for CNN, but he was certainly sitting at his desk wide open to the newsroom doing lines of cocaine on his desk during the day. It was a different era. But here's National Panhandler Radio. By the numbers, : they love their colons. A look at the Army's 250th anniversary parade on Trump's birthday. On Trump's birthday, that's the headline. Now, it's first and foremost the Army's 250th birthday, 250th anniversary. And as I described from the Washington Post piece from just several days ago now, June 9th of 2025, how Trump finally got the military parade he always wanted. No reason to believe he always wanted a military parade, but they lie all the time. And on June 12th, 2024, a year ago, pretty amazingly, today, a day when Joe Biden was still president, running for re-election, had every expectation of serving a second term, the U.S. Army filed a permit in the hopes of celebrating its 250th birthday on the National Mall the following year. So the Army filed for the permit a year ago. I guess the Democrats were going to just put it down. They were going to not allow it. They're going to choke the life out of it like a baby. You know, they're fond of doing that. But never mind that it started under Biden. Now it's happening, and it happens coincidentally. And I actually searched on the internet today. I didn't find anybody use the word coincidentally or coincidence. It's a coincidence that President Trump's birthday is also Flag Day, and Flag Day is the birthday, the anniversary of the creation of the U.S. Army, the great U.S. Army. But the Democrats, they're not on our side anymore. They used to be on our side. At least through World War II, they were pretty much on our side. And here's NBC fake news. Nationwide protests loom over Trump's upcoming military parade. It's not Trump's military parade necessarily. Would it have been Joe Biden's military parade? And the Democrats are calling him Hitler and an authoritarian and a fascist because the Army's birthday is being celebrated in Washington, D.C. The Democrats are, in the meantime, burning cities again, as they're fond of doing. And they'll be back to terrorizing the Jewish people real soon. Nationwide protests loom. And this is a big fake thing. They've ginned up another protest group that they say will be protesting with millions and billions of people across the country. Trump warned that protesters at the parade will be met with, quote, very big force, end quote. He drew no distinction between peaceful and violent protesters. He drew no distinction between violent and peaceful protesters. They love the idea, and it's because they're projecting their own psychotic, violent sensibilities. Love the idea of attacking nonviolent protesters. We haven't seen any of those. The Democrats keep burning and looting and terrorizing and attacking the police, and they're disguised like Hamas. And they're trying to get shot. They're trying to create a Kent State or a George Floyd or a Rodney King so they can really dial up the violence across the country. Donald Trump is getting the parade he wanted. This is NBC News using the same phrasing that the Washington Post is using. Showcasing America's military power. But he'll also be getting mass protests exposing the nation's partisan division, showing that the Democrat Party is a violent communist party, anti-American, anti-military. The tanks and artillery launchers rolling through Washington on Saturday will honor the Army's 250th anniversary, which falls on the day Trump turned 79. No coincidence, but about 7,000 soldiers will march. Hundreds of thousands of people are expected to line up along Constitution Avenue on the co-birthdays and cheer. Trump is set to watch the spectacle from a viewing stand south of the White House. But in Washington and in all 50 states, organizers, you know what that means, people that play with their organs, organizers will be staging protests that could dwarf the parade in size. I don't think you can say dwarf anymore, can you? Can you say dwarf? A coalition of pro-democracy. That means they're anti-democracy, labor. That means SEIU. One of the radical SEIU chiefs was arrested for being pro-illegal alien, wants to drive down wages in the United States. SEIU, communist. And they really are communists, those SEIU people, and close to the Obama White House. So the pro-democracy, it's a coalition of pro-democracy, labor, and liberal activists, mentally ill, gender dysphoric Democrats, is arranging a full day of counter-programming. It's not a TV show. To make the case that Trump is hijacking the Army celebration to venerate himself. Well, at least that's the left-wing radical media's narrative, and they stick to it, you know, like Joe Biden does to an underage girl. The goal here is to deprive Trump of what he wants in this moment, which is a story about him being the all-powerful political figure of our time, and instead create a contrast with normal, everyday people. That's the opposite of the truth, demonstrating that power in this country still resides with the people, said Ezra Levin, co-founder of the progressive group Indivisible. Sure, I don't think they know what that word means. Who is helping organizing their participants. They've dubbed it a nationwide No Kings demonstration. I'm sorry, didn't Barack Obama take over the healthcare system, which is like a fifth of the economy, and dictate to all of us what we would do for the rest of our lives and whether we would live or die because the government's taking over healthcare in the country? And no kings. Isn't Barack Obama the one who said he was going to fundamentally transform the United States of America? And isn't Joe Biden the guy that opened our borders and the floodgates were open for so long that more illegals flowed into our country than we had legal immigrants through Ellis Island over the course of 62 years while it was open for 62 years? If past protests are a guide, NBC News types, the participants could number in the millions, he said. And they're just quoting some left-wing radical. And he says it could be millions. I got here, let me tell you what. There could be hundreds of millions of armed Americans out there to greet you. Not really, of course. But when we're just making stuff up, let's just make stuff up. A total of 1,800 rallies are expected. Expected by whom? By some guy that nobody's ever heard of with a non-group that was just invented a few days ago. The news media lies about everything all the time. But it does help gin up violent mobs for the Democrat Party. The news media does. With events in each congressional district, he added, there'll be one person in every congressional district. Just amazing. 435 congressional districts. They're so organized, aren't they? Another group called Women's March. They're the ones with the pink beep hats. You know, that's the Women's March. They got the beep hats that they pull onto their heads. Is also arranging protests to coincide with the parade. That reminds me, we've got a Democrat member of the House of Representatives who uses very bad words about the female anatomy because they're all mentally ill. So the so-called Women's March arranging protests to coincide with the parade with the theme of kick out the clowns. Kick out the clowns. Sure. And I guess they're planning on burning things and looting and destroying and violently attacking in mobs because the left is here. Organizers expect 5,000 people to participate in Madison, Wisconsin alone. Now, there's a lot of mental illness in Madison, Wisconsin, said Tamika Middleton, Chief Political and Strategy Officer at the Women's March. I'm sorry, the Women's March has someone they call the Chief Political and Strategy Officer. Sig Heil. You guys should really be wearing armbands. Nothing feels more absurd than the idea of this president having a massive military parade on his birthday. See how stupid they are? It's the 4th of July. If his birthday were the 4th of July, they wouldn't want fireworks, except to fire them at the police across the country, which they were doing again yesterday. Just amazing stuff. She said it feels surreal for so many of us. You should stop touching yourselves because that's what feels surreal. Amazing stuff. On Tuesday, Rand Paul of Kentucky, the first Senate Republican to criticize the parade, citing the imagery, he said, showing off lethal hardware is something other countries do, not the United States. Rand Paul gets to think what he thinks. But let me get to and I'm going to disagree with him on this. I was in Washington. I was one of the people that set up the coverage for the 1991 Desert Storm Victory Parade in Washington, D.C., where we had an F-16 on a trailer coming. We had flyovers. We had lots of troops. We had just won a popular war against Saddam Hussein in Iraq. The Democrat Party had not yet become completely insane and uniformly violent over everything. But let me go to a couple of sound bites here. Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokeswoman, yesterday was assailed by a left-wing radical reporter, Jasmine Wright, from a non-organization called Notice, the News of the United States. And this was at the White House briefing yesterday about the parade.
The president warned that any protests on Saturday would be met with force. Can you clarify what kind of protest President Trump does support or find acceptable?
The president absolutely supports peaceful protests. He supports the First Amendment. He supports the right of Americans to make their voices heard. He does not support violence of any kind. He does not support assaulting law enforcement officers who are simply trying to do their job. It's very clear for the president what he supports and what he does not. Unfortunately for Democrats, that line has not been made clear, and they've allowed this unrest and this violence to continue, and the president has had to step in.
The First Amendment, the Bill of Rights to the Constitution, provides for us, the American people, us taxpayers, voters, to peaceably assemble. The Democrats don't know what those words mean, which is why they're firebombing everything and violently attacking, and they disguise themselves as Hamas and cover their faces and attack the police because they're violent criminals. Pretty amazing stuff, I've got to say. Jasmine Wright. Is that the reporter with the same? Jasmine Wright is the reporter harassing Caroline Leavitt.
So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the military parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question.
So if there were peaceful protests, the president would support that. No, we'd have to kill them all using M1 tanks. As usual, Jasmine Wright. I think if I were the White House press secretary, I'd have to ask her about her IQ and the intelligence of her parents and her grandparents. But that's me. President Trump was at the Kennedy Center last night for a performance of Les Miserables, Les Mis. The vice president was also there. And President Trump at the Kennedy Center last night talking about the Democrats burning and looting everything.
What we have is a situation in Los Angeles that was caused by gross incompetence. They didn't have the police to handle it. The police were asking us to come in. They were very late. We had to go in to save a lot of ICE officers, as you know, who were held up. They were holed up in a building, and they were being attacked. And the military went in. The National Guard went in and got them. We are going to have law and order in our country.
We're going to have law and order. Well, the Democrats say, no, you're not, because we're burning stuff again. You know, George Floyd, St. George, who died of cardiac failure because of the fentanyl and the methamphetamine in his system while he was resisting arrest for yet another felony and assaulting the police. The Democrat Party's with the criminal, as always, like Luigi Mangione, who they're all dating now. They're all dating, at least in their minds. Amazing stuff. And yesterday there was a hearing in the United States Senate, a Democrat from Hawaii. They're allowed senators now. They've got a Democrat senator named Brian Schatz. That's past tense. And he is going after Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. Hey, wait a minute. The National Guard's been called out into Los Angeles. Does that mean that you're going to use the military to take over the whole country?
Can you give us some clarification on whether the orders that were issued apply to specifically Los Angeles, to California generally, or is this a nationwide order?
The orders that have been issued, which are publicly available and known, relate to an ongoing situation in Los Angeles, which could expand to other places.
See, the thing is, there's a parade in Washington on Saturday, and because the Democrats are already burning cities and attacking police everywhere, There's legitimate concern that the left, that's the Democrat Party, the commies, will violently attack the nation's capital because the self-righteous gang of criminals, they believe that they're entitled to, and like, oh, will the president allow peaceful protest? No, absolutely not. Arrest this woman. If I were White House press secretary, it'd go very differently, I think. No, there will be no peaceful protest. The First Amendment has been scratched. You're under arrest. And drag her away. Make it, bring the FBI in. Arrest her like she's a Trump administration official. The Democrat Party. There's more from this Democrat senator coming up, talking to Pete Hegseth.
So if there were peaceful protests on Saturday for the military parade, President Trump would allow that?
Of course the president supports peaceful protests. What a stupid question.
The Democrat Party, where are they rioting now? It's hard to keep track. They're protesting. I'm making quotation marks with my fingers. In New York and Chicago and Seattle and Atlanta. And they're plotting, and that's the correct word. Nationwide protests on Saturday because there's a parade marking the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, and the Democrat Party is like communist China, and they're inside our borders, so they're going to disrupt everything across the country on Saturday to the extent they can. In the meantime, let's go to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Dave, calling from Silver Spring, Maryland. Dave, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Good morning, Chris.
Hey, Dave.
I love the Democrats. They're an unending source of entertainment. So they're telling us that Donald Trump draws no distinction between peaceful and violent riots. My memory may be going because of my age, but after January 6th, I don't believe the Democrats drew any distinction between peaceful and violent riots.
Or during the George Floyd riots from coast to coast, burning city after city, from Kenosha, Wisconsin to Miami and Atlanta, and on and on. No, they couldn't be bigger hypocrites, Dave, if their goal were to become bigger hypocrites.
Chris, if you're a good and decent person, excuse me, and you're a Democrat, you need to get out of that party because that party is filled with nothing but hate-filled, intolerant, violent Karens. And if you're a good person, you don't have to be a Republican. I'm not a Republican, but just get away from that party.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I'm nodding. I'm sitting here nodding to everything you say, Dave. Good common sense, like an American.